Welcome to another VC Wisdom podcast with Aman Verjee with us today. Aman is founder and general partner at Practical Venture Capital, PVC. We're going to talk about SaaS, the economy, e-commerce, SMEs, venture capital, Palo Alto, and everything in between. This pod is brought to you by my company. It's called podpire.com. If you want to start your own podcast, you can go to podpire.com. Aman, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and about PVC.
Thank you. Good to see you, Charles, and thanks for having me. So Practical Venture Capital is a secondary venture capital fund. We've been around for about 4 years. Our strategy is to invest in funds that we like. So we find funds that are performing well, that are doing well. Typically, they're concentrated in areas like SaaS or e-commerce, which are areas where I've worked in the past and in my prior jobs. My business partner is a gentleman named Dave McClure. He has made thousands of investments in companies. About 40 of them have become unicorns out of his portfolio. He's the founder of Founded Startups. So we have a lot of experience in running and managing funds that are in these areas. We find funds that we like. Usually they're about 5 or 10 years old. We look at the portfolios based on what we think they're worth, and we try to find sellers of those LP interests, basically people who are in those funds but who need liquidity. Typical venture fund is 10 to 15 years now. If you're a seed stage fund, it takes over 10 years to get any money back. So there are a lot of great companies that are private, that are doing well, that are growing, that are profitable, they're valuable, but getting liquidity, if you're an owner in those companies, is increasingly difficult. And if you're a fund who invests in those companies, it's doubly difficult. And so by providing liquidity, we can buy these great assets, usually at discounts of 30 to 70% on the fair value.
Pretty significant. I want to dive deep into your career because you had a wild ride, to say the least. You got into Harvard. How did that happen?
So I was born in Kenya in East Africa. My parents moved to Canada when I was a little itty bitty. I was in first grade or something, so 6 or 7 years old. And so I spent most of my childhood in Vancouver and Toronto. I think my path at the time, when you're an immigrant and you've just moved to a country like Canada, my background was East African, but from their Indian. Indian parents are very big into education. At least mine were. And so I always heard this message from when I was a little kid, like the only way you're going to get ahead, the way that your life will be better than my life, is through education. So I think I internally thought education was very important to me, and it was important to my family. My family didn't have a particularly strong view about Harvard or the top American universities. I think I came to that on my own. And by the time I was a teenager, I'd kind of had my sights set on Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, Yale. I really wanted to go to a top American university because I thought they were the best universities in the world, and I guess I still do. My backup would have been University of Toronto. My mother would have been great with the University of Toronto. It was right down the street. But I had my sights set on the American universities. I loved America and still do. Really loved everything it represented and stood for, and kind of knew from a very early age that I wanted to go and live in the United States and probably work on Wall Street someday. So I had my my path charted out pretty clearly from the time I was very young, and part of that was going to the best universities that I could find. And so I was lucky enough to go to Stanford and Harvard.
Right. And then you started in finance, Lehman Brothers. That is before they failed. It was in 98 that you were there. McKinsey, also right. Classic consulting paths there, which I love talking with ex-McKinseys because they have keen mind for business. And then the most notable one, so PayPal. So you were there almost like in the Elon days. I mean, Elon was fired by the board before that, but you were there from 2002 to 2008, so quite a significant period. What did you accomplish in your time there as a VP?
Yes, so at Stanford, I actually met Peter Thiel before he was Peter Thiel. I mean, he was Peter Thiel, but this is before he founded PayPal and before he'd really done anything that you'd know him for. He was at Stanford University in the late 80s, early 90s, and he was at the law school when I was undergrad. One of the great things he did was he founded a school newspaper called the Stanford Review. It was like a right-leaning, right-of-center, libertarian campus newspaper, still around today. I'm still chairman of the board of the Review. I loved the paper. I was a writer. editor and then became editor-in-chief, and Peter was on the board. So he and I got to know each other in the mid 1990s at Stanford. And then when I graduated from Stanford, I went to work on Wall Street, which is what I wanted to do. Peter tried to talk me out of it and tried to convince me to join his hedge fund, and then he started PayPal. But it was so early for PayPal. I didn't really have a feel for like, what is this company? What problem does it solve? I don't understand it. Internet and payments, I'm not sure. So I turned him down the first 2 times that he asked for me to work for him. But when I finished my stint on Wall Street, I went to Harvard Law. I came to Silicon Valley and worked at PayPal for about 3 weeks and helped to write the S1. So the first document you file when you go public is the S1. And this was in 99, 2000, when they were trying to figure out if it can go public. That didn't happen until 2002, but they needed someone to draft the S1. So that was me, and worked with Peter, a little bit with Elon and the team there. And then in 2002, after I graduated, I became a full-time PayPal employee. By then, they were public already. They had been figured out. They figured out their business model. They were transacting payments on the eBay platform. So making money, making profit, growing very well. And so I ended up spending 7 years at PayPal. My very first job there was like the junior guy in the IPO deal team. My last job 7 years later was running finance for PayPal. So I had the privilege of working with that team and doing all their budget setting, and ran the strategy group, and helped them to create this tremendous, very valuable franchise.
Peter Thiel, what maverick? A lot of people don't like him from being such a clear thinker and saying the truths that most people don't see. I'm certainly one of his fan, mostly. Love his keen mind and his strategic mind. What did you learn from working with Peter?
I still do learn from him every time we interact. I just think he is what I like about him is he is an exceptionally clear thinker. He's got his own view of the world. He is, and he's very good about, one, how he expresses himself, and then just 2, how he relates to people. If you don't like him, I suspect you've never met him, because that probably tells people who do interact with them. In fact, if you talk to all the early employees, people who work for him, I just asked, how did you like working for Peter? There are not many people who would say I didn't like working for him. The culture that he created at PayPal was meritocratic. It was very driven, very substantive. You could have arguments, you could agree to disagree, but then once we committed to a strategy, you walked out of the room, everybody felt like they're on the same page. I always felt like I could approach him and have a direct conversation with him. Didn't matter, rank or title or where you were in the organization. I think he gave a lot of great people opportunities to express their ideas. Built a really incredible team. That early PayPal team was Peter Thiel, Elon Musk. It had Max Levchin and Roelof Botha. Roelof is now the head of Sequoia, the general partner, managing partner there. It had David Sachs, who is founded and sold Yammer and is now the Kraft Ventures. Reid Hoffman, Keith Raboy, who is now at Khosla Ventures. Just a tremendous, and there's a whole bunch of people I haven't even mentioned who've gone on to do great things and found great companies. So the people he was able to attract and bring in, and that environment that he created, was very, very special and very exceptional. And I've always found him to be, a very thoughtful, open-minded guy. He's analytical, he's data-driven. You can change his mind with information. He obviously has his point of view, and depending on what you hear or how you hear it, maybe you like him or maybe you don't. But he's always, to me, in our interactions, he's always been very open-minded, fair, very thoughtful.
So it seems to me that John Donahoe was at PayPal and transferred into eBay. You were there at the Meg Whitman days, I believe. Yep. What did you learn at your time at eBay and working with these guys?
Yeah, both Meg and John. Meg was there earlier. She was their CEO of eBay when they acquired PayPal. And then John came in later, and he came in on the eBay side, on the eBay marketplace side. So he was never a PayPalian. What Meg was a very good, I found her to be a very good operator. Like, she had the ability to grow and scale that business in a way that I think the prior founding team without her probably couldn't have done. She was also, I think, an ex-management consultant, but as was John. But maybe unlike a lot of management consultants, like really good at like setting priorities, executing, getting stuff done. And I gotta give her a lot of credit. She scaled that business in a tremendous way and took eBay to the next level. John came in around, I want to say 2005. And I worked pretty closely with him. I think his strengths were he was a very good strategist, and he was able to think about how to organize a large company in a way that I learned a lot from. I did find the environment to be, I guess it was a large company. It was very political. A lot of silos had built up. There was like duplicate effort being done. I didn't love that, but I think to his credit, John understood that and also understood the need to delayer the organization. He was very aggressive, I think, in 2008-9 on headcount reductions, which we'd never seen. I mean, growing up in the Valley in 2001, 2002, I guess you would have seen it in 2000, 2001. But really, when I joined, we had 6, 7, 8 years of like rapid growth. And I think I'll learn from him. Hey, you got to think about getting efficiency and being able to really focus on what metrics matter. And, in his case, his big contribution that I saw was one, just the cost getting our arms around cost structure of the eBay marketplace business and eBay Inc., but also very customer focused. I remember him up until then, all of our bonuses have been paid based on earnings per share. Like, did you hit your numbers every quarter or not? And if you did, if EPS was above the threshold, you got your bonus. And if it was way above, you got a bigger bonus. And if it didn't make it, which we always hit our numbers up in those days, then you didn't get a bonus. He was the first one who said, I'm not going to just goal you based on earnings per share. I want to goal you on net promoter score. So what do our customers say about us? And are customers happier every quarter or not? Because if they're not, especially at the VP level, then we're not doing our job. So he began to incorporate customer metrics as a bonus goal. And I began to really think about, bonus goals, how these incentives flow to the employees, how to get everyone aligned. I think he was he shaped my thinking on that a lot.
And both company gave you stocks that must have turned out pretty good for you over the years.
Yeah, they did. PayPal in 2002 went public, I think at a $1.5 billion valuation. And today they're worth, I don't know, 75 billion. So the good news for those employees was I luckily I held my shares and didn't sell them at the IPO because I was working there. So I wanted to have part of that ride. But a lot of PayPal's value was created as a public company, like 75th of their value today came as a public company. That's not the case today, right? A lot of these unicorns and private companies they create a lot of the value in the private market, and then there's not a whole lot left for the public market, which is a different dynamic. But in PayPal and eBay too, were very aggressive users of stock comp to motivate people.
Right, and you occupied very important roles at these companies. I think it's important to mention. So CFO North America marketplaces at eBay, so 2 billion in revenue. Then Sonos, somewhat familiar with Sonos, a speaker company. You helped for a Series D of 135 million. So I guess that was the biggest amount you've raised for companies you worked at, right?
Yes. Yeah. When I joined Sonos, I was their CFO. And so that was after I left eBay. That was my first full-time CFO job of an independent company. And I just love their wireless sound technology. I remember meeting with the CEO the first day of the job interview in Santa Barbara. And, he was, I remember how the interview went. He sat me down in his office and we talked about finance and what does the CFO do? And it was all fine. And about 35, 40 minutes in, I thought it was going well. This is going well. And he began asking me about my childhood and where I grew up. And I was like, well, I grew up in Toronto. And he said, oh, okay. And he began fiddling with his phone. And I thought, oh, this is, okay, this is a bit weird. He's like distracted or is like multitasking or I don't know what. I thought the interview was going well. Maybe it's not going so well. And about a minute later, I start hearing like a radio station. And I'm like, what? That's interesting. Why is there music playing? That's kind of annoying. Maybe, maybe he'll turn it off in a second. Maybe that's an accident. And I'm recognizing, wait a second, I know that station. I know that DJ. I know that call sign. And it was like, it was basically like 99.9 Chum FM in Toronto. And John's looking at me, the CEO, and I'm like, is that a Toronto radio station here in Santa Barbara, California? He's like, yes. I'm like, how did you do that? He's like, let me show you what Sonos can do. You can stream music. This is like at the time, nobody could think, nobody thought you can stream music from another city into a place in California. Like we were still using CDs and cassette tapes back then. And he's like streaming music from my childhood radio station because they're streaming online. And I recognize what Sonos can do. It can connect people to music, different music services, streaming music at the touch of a button, You can increase the volume of the slider bar up and down, and you can find radio stations that you grew up with, or you can find a radio station, in like Ankara, or like, Radio Free Moscow, or whatever you want to, through all these different music services, all through these wireless systems. I thought this is pretty amazing. This is pretty life changing for 2010 or 11. It's actually one of the more impressive demos I've ever been in.
And it took him like a minute, which is funny, right? Because it was loading and stuff like that.
He probably did it. It's felt like a minute. I guess he had to find the Toronto radio. He knew where to grow up, around when. So I guess he figured out from his search what radio station I'd probably like to listen to. He knew that I like classic rock, and I think he very quickly found something that I connected to from my childhood, which was pretty impressive.
From his iPhone 5 or something like that. That's beautiful. Okay, then Visto, amazing company too. But I want to talk about being COO of 500 startups. Like that was, I believe, your first COO position, and that one falls outside of the CFO pattern. How did you get there? What did you learn with working over 2,000 portfolio companies?
Well, this was I'd done 3, I guess even 4 CFO jobs, and been in finance for 15 years by the time I got there. So I think I was at a point where I'm not sure what else I could learn in the finance track. I was having fun doing it. I enjoyed these CFO roles. Some of them worked out, some of them didn't work out. But I think I was also ready, to try something new and take a new chapter. My current partner, Dave McClure, was the CEO of 500 Startups. And so he had come to me before. He had said, look, if you ever want to leave the finance realm and go into investing, please come work with me. He's a 2-time member of the Forbes Midas list. He's made, tons of very successful investments. So working for him as an investor was a great place to go. And we had that prior relationship. And he had a portfolio that was over 2,000 companies. We had employees in 25 different countries and investments in probably 75 different countries, and thousands of investments. And so just being able to organize all the information around portfolio companies. I was on the chair of the investment committee. So we had to build an accelerator program that was investing in 30 to 50 companies every quarter. We did that in 2 batches here in Silicon Valley. We were also doing it in Latin America. We had a couple in the Middle East. So it was just it was a lot of fun being able to travel around the world. And then the biggest, for me, the operational part of it and putting together the funds and the portfolios was fine. But just meeting these entrepreneurs from all over the world, mostly seed and Series A entrepreneurs, was pretty amazing. How they found opportunities, how they executed on opportunities, what they were thinking about in their different regions, how we as an investor could identify arbitrage in different parts of the world where the valuations were better. That was just a tremendously fun experience, and it's something I still lean on today as an investor with Dave.
Seems that you had like an exceptional career. You're a money-making machine. What are your flaws?
My career flaws, personal flaws,
all of them.
That's a good second date question. I think what I've loved about my career is the ability to learn from. I'm good at finance and good at analytics, and I've always loved to sort of see business through that lens. That gets hard to do at the early stage. So as you try to work with entrepreneurs who are very early in their journey, I've recognized that these, like the financial models and the business valuations they do, don't really make sense in any way that a trained economist or financier would understand. And so I think relating to early companies and finding value, I mean, Dave is exceptionally good at it. And so I learn from him every day. Like I can't do that at the level that he does. I don't have, I guess, that imagination to sort of see where this can play out. Somehow other investors I've met in the area have more of a intuitive sense of it. I think that's still a bit of a learning experience, but one of the things you do in a career is like you build one chapter after the next. And so if these things are interesting to you, you just have to kind of learn to figure out what you're weak at, and then how to overcome it or surround yourself with people who are really good. I think the other, on the personal side, I love the fact that I have 2 wonderful kids. They're 12 and 10, both girls. I really do think I'm a great father. I'm a lean-in kind of father. I'm like coach of their soccer team, coach of their baseball team, very involved with their schoolwork and their academics. And I'm loving where that relationship is with the kids. I do think I had you had to make choices, I think, as you progress in life, and you have to decide whether you're going to be great at work, which is, if you're a CFO, it's a lot of work. You can be a great father, but that's also a lot of work, and you got to take time away from the job to be good with the kids. And then you have a spouse and a marriage, and you got to be a good husband and a good partner. I think I'm probably 2 out of 3. I think I'm very good on the career side. I think I'm a great father. Had a great marriage, 15-year marriage. Didn't it's over now, but I'm in a very good place with a very good relationship with my ex. But to be honest, if I had to rate myself, I'd be like, maybe I wasn't the best husband in the world. And I think you have to make these trade-offs and recognize it's just hard to go 3 for 3. And then you got to take care of yourself and go to the gym, and you got to work out, and then and so you got to be 4 for 4. And I don't think anyone is good at all 4 things all the time. I think there are maybe phases in my life where I could have been good at one, then good at the next, and good at the next. But I think when I, especially when I mentor people and talk to them now, I always tell them, don't try to do, if you have to recognize you got to make these trade-offs. If you're not going to be a great dad because you don't spend the time, that's okay. Like, lots of great people aren't great fathers, right? And you just focus on your work and maybe be a great spouse or take care of yourself. And you know what, the kids will probably be fine because they maybe have a great mom, or you have help. And so that's okay. But I think a lot of people, maybe even particularly a lot of women, think they have to do it all. And they got to be a great CEO and a great mom. And then you feel guilty when you can't go to the gym. And I think I've really tried to give up on being 4 out of 4. If I can be 2 out of 4, and I'm really, I'm being honest, like if I had to look back at my life now and say, hey, I really dropped the ball on being a father, I think I'd be pretty bummed out about that. I think if I look back and say, hey, I wasn't the best husband in the world, I've kind of learned to live with that. And so you begin to think about choosing your battles and really focus on what you want to do. So anyway, I think I've made peace with those flaws, but that's just the way that I've thought about it as I've progressed in my career.
Well, you're 4 out of 4, or 5 out of 5 with being honest and seeing your situation
Right.
as it is. Thiel is good at that too, and I say that you're not kidding yourself, and that's really good. I think that's one of the top traits of being a good VC and being a good founder. You're not kidding yourself, you're honest with yourself, and that's a really hard trait. Now with sports, I think people can hack it. For example, I live in the mountains here in Oaxaca, Mexico, and I just go for a run uphill for 30 minutes with my dogs, and I can even listen to an audiobook, a VC audiobook or startup audiobook, although I would never listen to those because they're not that good. But yeah, I'm trying to hack that. And now with my children's, it's a very odd strategy, but I don't think I'll send them to university and the classic education system, which I very much despise because I think it makes, it's a mold. Although Harvard is different, right? Like Harvard is top education, top teachers, most of the time that is, but I would educate them here and they would actually, mimic pretty much what I'm doing until they can start their ventures at like 10 and hopefully be profitable by 15. Is that naive strategy?
I think it depends a lot on the kid. So I have moved a lot on this. So remember what I said when I first came to Canada, right or wrong, my head was the only way I'll get ahead is through education, because that's what everyone in my community did. And that was very much like, you got to go to college, you got to go to a 4-year degree. I remember having a conversation with my parents before I went to private school. I applied to private school. It was a really good school, like a college prep school. And it was $2,200 a year, Canadian. And my parents were like, that's a lot of money for us. I don't think we can afford that. If you really want to go, you're going to have to work jobs and pay it off, and maybe we can make it happen. But $2,200 was a lot of money, and I took it, very seriously. And then I went to school and I did degrees that paid off, and I paid off my school loans. And so I never ended up in debt. I teach at Harvard now, business school. And so I see kids coming in, and these kids are $150,000, $200,000 in debt. They didn't go to great universities. They majored in, I don't know, film studies or African American studies or something, where I'm like, how do you pay that kind of debt off? And the quality of education is good at Harvard, but at the same time, for a lot of the kids, I don't think they're $200,000 in debt good. I think they can get a lot of those experiences working for someone like Peter Thiel at a venture fund or working in a job. You can take coding classes now without paying these exorbitant fees to the universities and have real practical skills. So I think now versus 20 years ago, if I had to do it again, I'm not sure I would follow the path that I did. I might follow the path you're you'd like your kids to follow. And I think more than, like, if I had to guess, my 10-year-old, when she was ready to go to college, I don't know about her specifically, but half of her friends are going to be like, I don't want to go to university right away. I might try to do something like what you just said, start a company, work at a startup, learn in a job, and then build my skills from there, take some coding classes, learn, travel the world, and then I'll see if I need to go get a 4-year degree in something. I certainly wouldn't advise going and getting that degree in English literature or something like that. I would definitely focus on a practical skill that you can really use. So I think, but it depends a lot on the kid. So my path would be different from my daughter's. Your kids will be different from you. The most important thing is what's right for the kid and how are they going to learn in the best way. And I've seen it. Kids at Harvard today don't learn what they should. They don't come to class. They're not getting the full benefit of what that education can get. I'm amazed. I lecture there, guest lecture there. I'm amazed that 30% of students don't show up to class on a lot of days. I'm like, how can that be? If I'm paying $60,000 a year, I would at least show up to class and take notes and memorize everything that the guy says, because otherwise, why am I paying all this money? But a lot of kids take it for granted, and that's unfortunate. So I think I just counsel you, just do what's right for your kid, and it's very specific to that individual child, and that path may be very different than what a lot of people think.
Yeah, I mean, didn't they check your LinkedIn 2 seconds? Like you're a freaking star. I mean, you won't say that out loud, but I can say it for you. And anyone skipping your class, I mean, I don't know what to tell them. Like I wish I would have had folks like you to teach me when I was younger.
I mean,
Yeah.
there are Nobel Prize winners who teach economics at Harvard, and so forget about skipping my class. We'll skip my class. I guess that's okay. But you got a chance to learn from some wonderful professors who are like writing the textbooks on economics, and yet 20 to 30% routinely don't show up. And it can tell from the grades they get and the exams they give. They're not getting, they're not putting in the kind of effort that I would expect. Now, a lot of kids do, and get a lot of great stuff out of it. But I'd say there's at least 20 to 30% that I don't understand what they're doing there.
Yeah, and I mean, Zuck was a nice inspiration for the startup world, but yeah, you're not like a Zuck necessarily. Plus, the market conditions are very different from his time. There's way more competition in most fields. So, yeah, they should definitely attend a bit more in that very specific case. I want to do a round two that would be more focused on PVC stuff. But for now, until then, Aman, where can people find out more about you?
Well, the easiest way is from our website. Practicalvc.com has like just an update on the fund and team bios and stuff that we're doing. We have a lot of information and blog posts that are posted there, and information about webinars and other things that we do. That's probably the best place to go.